County officials and city leaders recently met to kick off an update of the Community Framework Plan. Last adopted in 1993, the plan frames the community vision for locating future homes, businesses, and public facilities such as roads, schools, and parks. Recently, we sat down with Oliver Orjeko, Director of Clark County Community Planning, to learn why the plan is needed and how the public can get involved in the process.
Hello, I'm Jim Demmer with Clark County Close-Up. Thank you for meeting with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, first, what is a community framework plan?
The Community Framework Plan is a plan that the community expressed in a vision of how we ought to grow. And it is a plan that expresses that vision conceptually of what the community value at the time that it was prepared, and to grow the county in a manner that is very coordinated, yet provide opportunity for individual cities to also chart their own future. So that's really, in a nutshell, how the plan is set up.
Okay, and then how is the plan used?
When the plan was first adopted, the community recognized that that we may not always agree, but we could create a vision and values translated into county-wide planning policies, if you will. And the county and all the 7 cities have adopted those county-wide planning policies. It is the basis or the foundation for developing the 20-year plan. So that's how it is used.
So it's the base.
It is
Okay.
It is the base. It is the foundation. It's like the umbrella, right?
Got it. Okay. Now, are there certain standards you have to follow, and are these dictated by, let's say, the state?
Yes. The plan focuses on the state goals.
Okay.
So the state goals, there are about 13 goals. For example, on housing, on land use, on transportation, on parks, rural character, and the key livability indicators. So yes, the plan focuses on those state goals or planning goals. For example, the framework plan encourages or have a statement of vision, encourages the preservation of park and open space, for example, so that everyone can have access to nature. So there are parallel goals when the plan was developed. It followed pretty much the statewide planning goals.
So you kind of talked about some of these basic elements of the plan. So parks, open space, housing, any other kind of basic elements that?
Economic development, jobs, all that is expressed in a way of vision and values and countywide planning policies, yes.
Okay. Now you mentioned, so the county does currently have a framework plan.
Yes.
And it was adopted when?
The original plan was adopted in 1993.
Okay.
And just as we have changed, our community have changed as well. So it is time to check in to see how we are doing and what do we need to add or change or modify going forward.
Okay. And as you mentioned, the plan was 20 years ago, the plan was kind of the basis of developing growth plans for not only the county but cities as well.
Yes.
So how often does the plan need to be updated, and is there a deadline?
Back in 1993, when the plan was adopted, the community didn't really set a date for the community framework plan to be updated. We felt that next year would be the 20th anniversary of its adoption, that we should take a look as to how we, what have happened and how should we move forward, check in with, I mean, like I said, the population of the county, for example, have doubled. What have our values remained the same? What are new issues that may be added as we look at updating the next plan?
Well, just off the top of my head, I mean, think, growth has slowed.
Yes.
Growth has slowed, and when you look back for 20 years ago, we were really reliant on real estate development, all that. That's really slowed, so that's some of the things you're talking about.
Yes, and the other thing is that 20 years ago, we didn't have the physical or the financial structure have also changed. When the plan was adopted back in 1993, we didn't have the 1% property tax limitation. So there's some other physical issues structurally that have changed. So going forward, all that needs to play a role on how we plan and what we can afford, and how do we then continue to grow in a manner that still have those shared values as we move forward.
Okay. So recently you held a kickoff work session, and we used some footage from that in the video open. Who attended that session?
The session was, the invitees were the cities, other partners. The school district were invited, Columbia River Economic Development Council were invited, other partners, neighborhood association were invited. So that's really who was invited at this initial meeting to get an idea and understanding, because some of the folks that attended, I don't think were here back in 1993, but just to get an idea of what the plan is all about. It wasn't more of a tutorial, it's just let's check in, get a good understanding. That's who was invited. And community planning is in charge of updating the county comprehensive plan, and the next timeline to do that is 2016. The framework plan sets out direction for the future, and checking in now before we launch the next comp plan provide decision makers clear direction from our community. So that's why that workshop was kind of like a kickoff, understanding and getting ready or getting started.
So just to confirm, so 2016 is when you're looking to have this wrapped up by?
Yes.
Okay.
For the next plan update.
Well, then let's kind of talk into the process. What kind of process are you going to be using over these next, well, it will be 3 years to update this plan?
I can say that we are still putting the pieces together.
Okay.
We are looking at utilizing different communication tools and method to capture what the younger generation, for example, who want to live here, what they would like to see. We are hoping that the process will be about 12 to 18 months. I think this is initial stage. So what I would say is stay tuned, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's being developed.
It's being
I'm thinking
developed.
20 years ago, when it was done, you had fax machines, because I remember fax machines.
Yes.
But internet was kind of new.
It was kind of new.
Kind of new at that point.
If you remember the type of cell phones that were used 20 years ago, now you have iPad. Our mode of transportation have changed. We didn't used to have electric plug-in cars, so things are changing. The technology, have changed. The method that we use to communicate have changed. So those are some of the new tools that we will use to reach out to the younger generation. Plus, 20 years ago, we now have an aging population, if you will. Remember, we engaged the community to develop a plan that is for all ages. We also, working with public health, engage the community again to develop a plan that now includes health in our planning process. So new things are coming online as we continue to grow over time. So, and how we've developed have also changed. If you ask folks that were here, say 20 years ago, 10 years ago, they've seen a significant change in the way that the county has grown. But you're right, things have slowed down recently, but it doesn't mean that we will stop growing. So this is an effort to revisit what we've done, how do we move forward, and what do we need to add going forward.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I mean, and then not only do you have to look at the change 20 years ago to today, but then you have to think, okay, what kind of changes will be 20 years from now?
Yes.
And I'm just thinking like electric cars, for example. Plug-in stations is nothing you thought about, but I'm assuming you'd have to consider infrastructure like that.
Yes, that's true.
And small farms, for example, it's become more of a trend to have food closer.
Yes, right. And those are the type of issues that you got to also be looking at what is trending and how will that impact how we grow and what are the implications. We should be considering those things, and that's really what we are hoping that this conversation will lead to, and that will then inform us and inform the decision makers of what we do going forward.
So how are you going to get this kind of outside perspective? I'm kind of thrown off on schedule on this. You'll be seeking input from the public, and
yeah, we will be. Like I said, we are beginning to put the pieces together, but we will be visiting each city and several areas throughout the county to ask them what they think. Of course, we will have the traditional ways to keep in touch: website, email, surveys. So we are really excited about visiting and using different tools.
okay. And so you mentioned how you'll be talking to cities, also school districts, the CREDC. You've already be working with them. Any other groups you're going to be working with as you go through?
There are other entities out there, whether it's Identity, Clark County, whether it's the business, the building industry. There's so many other partners that we are going. This is going to be done in a very collaborative and collective effort. So we will reach out to all the partners that we work with. So that's really our goal, is to engage the community in the discussion. As we put this together, we will then really identify to make sure that all voices are heard going forward.
Now you mentioned for the general public, you mentioned surveys, web. Are you planning any possibly like public forums to get input? What types of things for the general public?
Well, yes, as you you can do it again through survey. You can do workshops, which we've done in the past. So all those tools are going to be used to move this process forward.
Okay. And then you talked about earlier that you had a committee take a look at the elder population and as well as growing healthier communities, for example, has been a push, and I believe also managing shorelines. How will these task force input also be woven into this community framework plan?
Well, Jim, that's a good question because we've had great community conversations on preparing for a healthier community and a community good for all ages, as I indicated earlier or mentioned. For shorelines, it was more preservation of our critical waterways. And each of these areas and others express a need for changes in our framework plan. Those things were not considered in the framework plan. As I said, it was a statement of vision and values expressed conceptually of how we need to grow. Some of this we will need to incorporate the ideals from these areas and develop county-wide planning policies on areas where we think it's more regional in nature that has to be done, not only on the county, but cities involved. And in that way, we will have the tool in place for the next plan update.
Okay, well, it's a fascinating subject. So the big thing, people just need to stay tuned that there will be outreach and all that, so stay tuned. Now, if people want more information about this, where can they check?
Well, as I said, we are still developing how the public can get involved. You know how we work. The best place to start is to go to our homepage,
Okay.
which is www.wa.gov/planning.
Okay.
To sign up to keep in touch. When we make changes to our website, we will send an email out. The web page will be our go place for information, and we will also use other tools that are available to communicate to folks on how to be involved.
Well, it's a fascinating process. I'm sure we'll be talking to you in the future about this.
No, thank you for inviting me. And again, this is the beginning to have a conversation. Values change. We gotta consider that as we determine how the community wants to grow. So this is just the beginning. We are in a process of developing how we do this. I'm sure our city partners will be interested in the conversation, and our decision makers as well. So this is the beginning of the conversation. We will put out our webpage, and people will be able to keep in touch, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you for meeting with us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.